Hello SimCityers, I'm reviewing SimCity now that it's been out for a while and I've got enough gameplay in and enough experience with the game to give it a proper review. Now I'm not going to let the launch of this game influence this review at all. It was a pretty shoddy launch, but I don't want that to affect the outcome of the actual game itself. So it's almost been 10 years since SimCity 4 last came out, and EA has decided to revitalize the SimCity series by bringing out a brand new iteration of SimCity with the aptly named SimCity game itself. Now this game has a really deep simulation through the Glassbox engine. It allows a full city to run itself practically, from the industry shipping units to the commercial buildings selling those units to citizens who pay money and gain happiness, and that's how the system works. It's a very good simulation. It incorporates environmental considerations, air pollution, ground pollution, and it brings in a whole lot of new aspects to the game, such as mining and heavy kind of specializations you can get through that way. The game has expanded to allow you to specialize your city. You can specialize your city through mining, through trade, through tourism, and allows you to generate an income that is more than just through taxes, which is a lot better than previous SimCity titles, which basically, if you were running into money troubles, you either had to delete buildings or just expand even further, which would give you trouble in other regions such as public transport, roading issues, and because that's the only few ways you can move around your city, it was definitely limited by what you could really do if you wanted to expand your city out. So by taking in all these specializations, you're definitely allowed to go further with what you want to do. You can generate more income and you can buy the more expensive things for your city, and you can use the resources that come in with your map. That's something that's never been there before. You've never been able to see if you had coal, if you had oil in your map, and you can build those and you can specialize and you can generate a whole city around those industries, just like how it works in real life. And this wasn't available before, and it's definitely a huge improvement for the SimCity series by allowing you to specialize. They've also gone further on to expand the relationships between all the RCI, residential, commercial, and industry. And this falls into what I was saying before with the game simulation engine, how industry builds products, products go to commercial services sources products, and Sims buy happiness with the money that they earn from working in the factories. So this whole thing works in like a small little circuit, and it is a much greater improvement over the previous iterations. They've also gone to make more consistent how the different classes work in this game. You know, you must have the right kind of parks to develop high wealth. You must have the right kind of parks to develop medium wealth. You know, and you can attract the right kind of Sims, or you can push away the wrong kind of Sims by what you put around in your city. Like basic infrastructure attracts basic Sims, but you can go a lot further with how this whole happiness system works and how density works as well. In this iteration of the game, they've also done away with the old school graph system that was used in SimCity 4, and then they have now moved towards this whole data maps and layer system. Now, looking at it, it makes a lot more sense. When you look at the map, you can see exactly where the issues are happening, and you can deal with the issues straight away. An example is just education. You can see where your students are not enrolled, and you can see where they are enrolled. It's a great way to see, well, like, I need to pull more education services here. It's a big step up from SimCity 4. You would look at the students and you see education was in the red, but you weren't really sure, why is education in the red here? Is it because there's no students there? There was a bunch of factors that were quite hard to understand, and this whole system makes it a lot easier. It does have its catches. Sometimes with, say, electricity or water, you just want to see, you know, what is the output of my city, and what does my city demand, and you want to see a graph that just says that so you can build, rather than have to keep checking back on your power station during the nighttime and the daytime to see, well, I need to build better, I need to improve my power station now. Sometimes the data maps don't let you do that. They only show you that everyone's getting power, and it's a little unfortunate that it happens, but it's the way they've gone to go. And while it brings some improvements, it does limit the game as well sometimes when you just want the graphs back. Now, the graphics in this game are naturally a huge step up from what they were in SimCity 4. There's also a great variety between the buildings. You look at a city and it definitely has a lot more variety than, say, SimCity 4, where you can maybe get the 1 or 2 big apartment buildings. Now, these were expanded during mods, which unfortunately aren't available in the new SimCity, but it does come out of the box with a great variety between its buildings, and you don't often see very similar buildings. And if you do see the same shape buildings, they're different colors. They have different variety from the get-go anyway. So the game definitely does bring very pleasant graphics to look at. They do stay within the very Sim style. They don't go for a very realistic sharp graphics. They go for a cartoon-esque, very Sims graphic, but then it fits into the whole Sims family of the game. It definitely fits into where it belongs, I believe. Another addition to this game, which has made it a lot more fun, is just the variety in street types. Previous titles before the expansion pack in the core game, you only had basic streets, highways, and sort of normal roads, and that was pretty much it for variety in street types. This game, they've gone a lot further, and they have roads that determine density. Now, while I don't personally agree with how they measure density in this game, the variety in roads is amazing. And not only do we have a variety in roads, we also have a variety in the shapes of those roads. They can be circles, they can be whatever we want them to be, or you can go with the grid from SimCity 4, which is basically what you were limited to. It opens up a lot of varieties and definitely gives your own city its own character within the whole region of other people's SimCities. Now, the multiplayer component of this game is actually really, really fun. You do actually need more than one city in a region. Now, I'll get to that later on when I go to the criticisms of this game. But having other people play and you can go visit their cities is quite fun because you can learn from what works in their cities and what doesn't work. It's a constant learning process, and I really enjoy about this game because I don't claim to be an expert. I just sometimes have a knack for this game, and seeing what other people do, I learn from them, and people can learn from me. And I think it's like a really good system, just not only from learning, but you can trade, you can give resources, you can help a friend out who's struggling with the game, and you don't have to worry about it because they're just within the region next door. However, I wish there was an ability to abandon your city and start from scratch again. That is missing, and that's really frustrating because if you found a little lot and you're building your city quite nicely, you either have to bulldoze the entire thing or you have to start the region again just if you want to build that city on the same square again, because it doesn't go away, it stays there forever. Now for some of the criticisms that I have with SimCity. The obvious one is the constant online connection. It takes away the control from me personally as a player. I don't like that ability of having to wait till the game that I purchased is ready to play. And the inconsistencies that come in game, I'll have a little pop down that says, connection lost with SimCity Online, but I keep playing. Yet sometimes the game will close down when I lose connection, so I'm unsure of what the consistency is here. What happens when I lose connection to the server? It's meant to be that once you lose connection to the server, the game turns off. Yet sometimes I can keep playing and I get reconnected, so the inconsistency is a bit frustrating for me because I don't really have an idea of what's going on around, or what's happening during the game. Is my game saving? Is it not saving? And that whole issue is not particularly obvious to the player. You have to follow what is on the forums, what is on SimCity news releases to find out what actually happens when your game's not working. It's unfortunate they don't have something in game that tells you this is what's happening because you've just lost internet connection. Even a little pop-up box saying like, you've lost connection and if we can't get it back within 30 seconds, well then the game's going to have to close. Just a nice little warning, because for all you know, you could lose connection but still be able to play, keep playing, and then you come back into your game and your whole city's gone back like, $50,000 worth of constructions that you've added to your city. And while that can be frustrating, the most frustrating aspect I find for this game is the limited size of the cities. Now in the beta, I didn't really notice this much. With only an hour to play, I was quite happily building up my city and I would get it to around medium density. That's kind of where I wanted it to be and was enjoying playing it. And even though I could hear people saying on the YouTube, on other videos or just Facebook comments as well, saying, oh, this game's too small, make the map sizes big, I was just like, oh, I don't see it as really being that big of an issue just yet. But playing this game for more than 1 hour, when you start expanding to meet the demands that your city needs, that's when you notice the city size. And it is by far the most stagnating feature of this game I can find. I'll play this game for a couple of hours, I'll fill up my city lot, I'll have the densities that I want, and I have the city that looks like I want. This game isn't fun to manage your city. It's fun to build your city. And once you build it up to the area that you want it to be, it's not that entertaining to manage. And because some of the big services later on in the game require a lot of big space, I'm talking the recycling center, the sewage treatment plant, the water plants, if you don't have access to those because you don't have the space available in your city because you've expanded that way just to unlock it, then it becomes increasingly frustrating when you want to put those facilities in. You have to start deleting blocks of your cities away, and you don't really want to do that because you've just spent the past couple of hours building that city up. So I find it very stagnating once you reach basically the borders of the city, and unless you basically go high density everywhere, apartment buildings everywhere, big tall story commercial buildings everywhere, big high tech, high density industry, the game can be quite stagnating, and it basically forces you to move to another city rather than to stay and manage the city that you have. And it's kind of a bit ironic where this game tries to teach you aspects of, build an environment that's safe and healthy for your Sims, think long term with your decisions. If I build something here, what's going to happen in the future, when it doesn't really matter what happens in the future because you're going to fill up your space and then bugger off and leave it and go build somewhere else, and then that city just stays there. And that's what I liked about SimCity 4. You definitely had the space to expand your city, and managing it was quite interesting, tuning up the schools to make sure they stayed in tune with how the densities were increasing. Whereas this game, I don't really find it. And even though they do say that it was the same size as a SimCity 4 medium-sized map, the fact that the buildings in this one and everything else is a lot larger than what came in SimCity 4, this game becomes more noticeably smaller. You can build a very small town, and it takes up a lot of space, whereas it wouldn't take up anywhere near as much space in SimCity 4. So I do think that is a criticism, and I really wished that in the future we would see bigger cities, either in a sequel to this game or even through DLC, which is probably inevitable. Now, speaking of inevitable DLCs, where can SimCity go? Because, we're knowing EA we're most likely going to get DLCs, where can SimCity go? And some of the things that I would like personally to see is just a greater variety in some of the roading types that we have. In this game we have a very American-based roading system. We have big wide avenues, big 4-lane, 6-lane streets for high-density roads. And, that's how we get high density. We increase the lane size. Now, in the real world, that doesn't necessarily apply. You can have big high-density buildings next to narrow little roads. I would like to see some variation there, maybe some Eurocentric sort of ideas where we can have little narrow walkable streets. These things exist in the US as well, but they're mostly based in Europe, around medieval villages, stuff like that, where we have narrow little streets and big buildings. Just pure, maybe shared space streets where it has a focus on pedestrian and car movement. This game is a great mechanic for measuring the movements of the pedestrians around, so I wish they would expand that more and let us have pedestrian-orientated streets. Something like that, something to expand more. I also liked for some pre-order bonuses that you could get like European themed, like such as Paris, Germany, or English themed buildings, and I'd love them to take that further. Just a whole bunch of like European themed, maybe like English themed buildings or French themed buildings, just somewhere different, and you can explore a different architectural style and see that spread throughout your city, rather than having just the one architectural style, the very standard system that they have in SimCity. I would like that to take that further with a bit of an international flair. Now I would also like them to open up maybe some more specializations or some more great works. I mean, we have the 4 and they're fun and all, and once we unlock all of them, we'll probably get to see what their advantages are and maybe get a little tired of them, because in the different regions we're only going to be limited to the 4 great work sites. So if we have a few more, and you have to really choose between which ones you want to have in your region, then this game might become a little bit more interesting and a bit deeper as well. At the moment, if you pick the largest region, you can have all 4 city specializations, whereas if in a smaller region, you'd only be able to have the one. I would find it a lot more interesting if you were limited, that you only had the 4 great work sites, but you had 8 great works to choose from, and so you really have the opportunity cost to consider as well in this game. If I pick this one over this one, what are the advantages? You do the same thing in your city when you specialize. When you go coal, or when you go trade. Well, we say, well, I'm going to spend my money and buy this trade building rather than buy the gambling house. What are the costs and benefits of that? I wish we'd have that sort of aspect included into picking the great work sites as well. So overall, I would give this game 4 suits out of 5. I think it did an amazing job at being a city simulation game, and that's what it went out to be. However, some of the aspects around the map size and the online connection make it a little confusing to me as to what's really going on, and the limited map size make this game stagnate a bit further on. And in terms of being a real city, the size does limit you, and that's probably what brings this mark down a bit, because it would have done a really amazing job had the size been a little bit bigger. And if they want to improve it, I'd say it'd have to be at least twice as big, and maybe even 4 times as big if you really go out there to make a proper city. So thanks for watching, and I hope this review helped you out. And if you're still thinking about SimCity, if you're on the fence about it, I would say go for it. After that shoddy launch, they managed to get the system down quite well, and it's still quite enjoyable to play with, and playing with others always makes it an enjoyable thing as well. So I say go for it. Still a good purchase. Thanks for watching, and drop a comment or a like, it all helps this channel out. Thank you so much.